Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about things that we have decided to talk about, any questions that come up that are related to media and virtual production. Second hour is something we'd like to spend a little more time on. Today, we actually close YouTube after the first hour and then go into education, which is only on Zoom. So you'll have to go to officehours.global and sign up, and then we'll send you an email, and then you'll sign up, and then you'll end up there if you need to. So we're about to jump into the questions, but while the Christmas is over in Australia, Grant has a little Christmas gift for us. Grant?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Alex. Yes, the day has finished. The Christmas day is finished. We call it Boxing Day, the day after Christmas Day, and it was a good day. So we live in the future, right, in Australia, and so I'm just letting you all know that Christmas Day is very good. All right, there's nothing to be worried about. It's going to be great. But something, any excuse about this time last year, Victor and I did something on office hours, and so we wanted to do something again. And so this day, we're bringing the number one the best selling single of all time. Does anyone know what it is? Sold 50 million copies. Single, not an album, but a single.
White Christmas.
It's Bing Crosby's White Christmas, and so we're going to sing that for you now. Here we go. Oh, and live this time too. So it's 1:30 in the morning. All right, so just lower your expectations a little bit. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, just like the ones you used to know, where the treetops glisten and children listen to hear sleigh bells in the snow. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas, with every Christmas card I write. May your days be merry and bright, and may all your Christmases be white.
That was great.
For extra points, what movie is that from?
Yeah.
Extra points if you can tell what movie that's from.
White Christmas.
Holiday Inn.
White Christmas, yeah.
Holiday,
Amazing.
yeah, Holiday Inn.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
I'm in disbelief that was Grant. I would never expect.
Yeah, don't
that
take
to
this the
come
wrong.
out of it.
Don't take this the wrong way, Grant. But every time you sing, I'm like, I can't believe that voice is coming out of his mouth. It's so amazing.
Thank you. And that's why I had to do it live this time. I said to Alex, do I need to do something where I prove that it is live, and maybe we can change the lyrics and we work out all the lyrics and make that as live. But you all know you could tell it was totally live, except for Victor's part, which he recorded at home before he hit the road. So thank you to Victor. Beautiful solo.
Thanks,
Victor's
Grant.
going to be at my house on Monday, so we'll be on after hours.
It's great. It's such a great way here in California. It's such a great way to start off the Christmas day is with a nice little song. So thank you so much, Grant. It's really, really a pleasure.
My pleasure.
I don't know if we figured out who was going to ask the questions.
That's me.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
It's Dennis.
Oh, Dennis is asking. Yeah, there we go. Go ahead, Dennis. Take it away.
Yep. Could I have the large view of the questions, please? The camera is a little far away.
Yeah, no problem.
But I can go with the first question while you're sorting that out. Season's greetings, one and all. The first question today comes from Mitchell Hill in Wilmington, Delaware. What present did Santa bring you today?
Chad.
For a couple of years, I've been exploring sous vide cookery, and I think Santa observed me looking at aprons that might look at home on a blacksmith, but instead he got me a better one that I thought this group would really appreciate.
That's great. That's very good. Go ahead, TJ.
Aside from getting to spend some time with my kids last night, Santa delivered this amazingly cool knit hat that my wife made for me.
That's awesome. So it's so nice that your wife was able to make that hat and then send it to the North Pole,
Yeah,
and then have it come back down. It's amazing how that teamwork works.
I don't know. She must have shipped it DHL to Jeffrey to get it back here on time. It was amazing.
Dennis.
My husband got me this lovely new jumper, along with some fudge, and my sister got me an amazing present. It's a granite pestle and mortar.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Very good. Tony?
I got nothing. Nothing. Nothing.
Congratulations.
I'm supposed to be getting a couple of things coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
I am supposed to be getting a arm that Alex Lindsay uses for his microphone.
Amazing.
And there's a rumor that I'm going to get some upgraded lighting.
Oh, wow.
But I actually have nothing yet.
Excellent. Grant?
So 3 months ago, I told my kids, I want to get some fish. I used to have little, like fish in a little aquarium. So 3 months ago, they bought me an aquarium. It turns out it's a highly complex chemical process that you have to do to have fish these days. I remember just getting tap water, throwing goldfish in, you're done. It's taken me 3 months, and the thing that's pushed me over the edge was a special pH level meter, not just pH, but all the 6 nitrates and all this stuff. And there's an app that has this little kit, and you dip the test thing in, and then you sit it against this card, right? And the app, you take a photo. The app does analysis of the test strip against the card, and then tells you everything. So it was an app that turned it all around for me, and so I now have Huey, Dewey, and Louie in my my new fish that joined the family today. So I'm very excited.
That's great. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Thanks. Sometimes the best presents you get are the ones you give yourself. Stocking stuffer wise, I finally got a 90-degree connector for my microphone so I don't bump into it underneath, which kind of works out well. And my favorite gift, I think I showed it to a few people yesterday, is I finally got a teleprompter. This one came from ICANN. It's small and fits on the camera pretty much like a matte box does. It slides over the lens, supports itself, has its own monitor, and the price is right. Again, I can disclose the price because I gave it to myself. $299 from B&H. It's made by ICANN, called the Home Stream. So I tested it out. Works pretty well. And now I can make eye contact with Alex.
Here we go. Sorry about that. Next question. Not next question, David. Sorry.
That's okay. I got a gift from the guy at the Sunday place who retired. He gave me an old, what's it called? A Santoko Bocho. It's a Japanese knife. It's pretty sharp, wicked sharp, as a matter of fact.
Where is it? Where is
it's
it?
in the kitchen.
Oh, man.
I could get it if you want, but
you should bring it back later.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I like knives. not I like cooking knives. I like cooking knives. Maybe all knives. All right. Next question.
The next question comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington, in the USA. And he asks, how did you discover the wonderful world of office hours?
Go ahead, John.
I was brought in here, as I've said many times before, by watching Alex on MacBreak Weekly. And he told us about it, and I joined shortly afterwards.
Go ahead, Tony.
I was going through cancer treatment, and I had an opportunity to see a tweet from Alex Lindsay and also hear about it on MacBreak Weekly. And I'm just so happy to be a part of this community and all of the things that we've had an opportunity to do.
Roscoe.
I was watching a gear review video on YouTube, and the guy mentioned that he'd gotten some really good advice about this particular piece of gear from Office Hours and had put the link in.
Nice. Grant?
I guess it was a year or so before Office Hours. Alex, you were doing Ask Alex. You were doing those like little live streams that you were testing out. Was that Mukana that you were testing out then? It was kind of that whole system?
I think I might have been, yeah. I think I was just testing early versions of Mukana, just kind of turning it on, letting people do stuff, yeah.
So it was at that point that I worked out that it was best for me to set up notifications on Twitter to get push notifications when Alex pushed out, because he'd often just say, "Ask Alex now," and it'd be like, "All right, drop everything," and I'll be like, "Okay, I've got my list of questions to ask Alex." So because of that, when it came to COVID times, and then he was just like, "Okay, I'm going to start this thing," I got a push notification on my phone, and it was like, register at Zoom, and I was first to register.
You're the first one. Grant is member number one.
There we go. And it was because of Twitter push notifications that got me in.
So there's your lesson. Always put me on push notifications.
That's right.
I apologize in advance for whatever you're going to get.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. It truly is an amazing community, and I love being here.
Absolutely. David?
I was looking for ways to kick up the Zoom game, stumbled across Liminal, and they brought me in. It was like Andy's first visit here.
Right. Laura? Can't hear you, Laura.
Okay, keyboard shortcuts aren't working this morning. Okay. It was very early days. You had mentioned it was the second time you mentioned it on MacBreak, and then I saw it on your Twitter, and I was having real problems with the whole Zoom and JAWS, and so I jumped in. We're chatting on Zoom at the time. We were still chatting in Zoom. Mukana wasn't a thing yet. And you said, "Whoa, wait, jump on the panel." You and I got to do a little back and forth in the chat, and you're like, "You need to jump on the panel with us." And that was it.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Mitchell.
It was summer 2021, and I was immersed in building my Zoom room, and I was doing a huge amount of research to try to figure out what works and what doesn't. I was talking to Adam Tao at MixFX Pro, the inventor, and Adam said, after he talked to me for a while, he said, "Yeah, you really need to be on Office Hours." And of course, what's that? And I jumped in, and when I jumped in, I literally jumped in as a panelist, and I had trial by fire there, but you guys were very welcoming and made me feel very comfortable. And so like I said, don't underestimate a name or a place until you've had a chance to appreciate it firsthand, like I have.
George?
Like many of you, I follow Alex on Twitter and obviously LinkedIn. And, I've met him before. So once he said he had this thing going, I came on. I don't know what number I am, but it's been life-changing it might be a bigger stretch, but definitely life changing. Yes, and moments like this morning with Grant makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. Courtney.
Yeah, I also heard about Office Hours on Mac Break Weekly, and been stalking Alex for years. Actually met him a couple of times, but it took me a couple of months after hearing about Office Hours to drag myself out of bed at this time of the morning and gather up the courage to be on the panel.
And go ahead, Lois.
Well, I never heard of Alex before I got here. I started finding out about Zoom, went to the Zoom test kitchen, been there for over a year, and several people said, oh, you really need to go and check this thing out. So I did. And I made the mistake when I got here. I didn't know about Mukana, so I just went to raise my hand to ask a question, push that little button. Next thing I know, I'm on the panel. Well, I didn't go on the panel that day, but within a few weeks, I was checking it out and doing it.
Well, I'm glad all of you found your way. It's really, really great to have all of you. Absolutely. Let's go to the next question.
Our next question comes from Jasmine Lee in Singapore. What is the most interesting Christmas-related media content you've seen this year?
Go ahead, TJ.
It's actually been Hawkeye. I really like the way they incorporated a lot of the Christmas music into the show itself and actually into the mood of the show. Certain scenes, they bring in Christmas music and various, dramatic or lighthearted, whatever. Really cleverly done, I thought.
And John?
As a Marvel fanboy, I have to echo TJ's pick of Hawkeye. It's one of the best shows I've seen this year, especially the finale and the Christmas tree with the owl.
Nigel?
I thought the animated Ted Lasso thing on YouTube and Apple was pretty cute. I have to say that I do slightly miss the days in the UK where, with very few channels, we all watched the same program and talked about it for a week afterwards. So the Morecambe and Wise specials, I think that sort of day is gone, which is sad.
I think it may have a comeback, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I mean, a lot of us have tried to figure that out, and we've done tests, and I think that we're going to see the idea of syncing people up with viewing probably in the next year or two. A lot of us are talking about it. And usually when a lot of us are talking about it, it's clear it's nearing the surface. Go ahead, Tony.
Hawkeye, of course. The new Matrix was good, and the Wheel of Time.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
There was this awesome rendition of White Christmas that I just heard just recently by Grant. That's right. That was the name, and it was really good. And a saxophone by Victor. That was just awesome. You should listen.
I will say that I agree that I think that the song at the beginning of this was the best new piece of Christmas related content that I saw this year. So really, really well done, Grant and Victor, if you're watching. For me, I think I know this will sound crazy, but we were talking about a little bit before the show is, for me, I watch It's a Wonderful Life every year, and my dad did before me. My dad would have whole parties around the movie, and I just feel like you unwrap something new every time you watch that movie. Like, I know it seems like a simple little movie that was made in 1946, but it is the thing that I got on this last one was how much we were talking about before the show. How much Mary is in control, like his wife. Like, she's in control from the time she's 6 years old. She's in control of the whole thing, like the whole process. She's the thing that keeps him on the line, and it's just, but it's a funny thing to see that I didn't see that thread before, and then there's little signs in the background behind him, his father's office. When he walks into his father's office, there's a picture. And I'd never noticed it. It says, I literally didn't notice it until last night. It says the only thing that you get to, what was it? The only thing you get to you get at the end is what you gave away. And it's like a little sign that there's no highlight to it. It's just behind him while he's talking. It's an incredible, it's a movie that I would highly recommend unwrapping because it's just such a great movie. Anyway, go ahead. Next question.
The next question is from Tony Mobley in Newnan, Georgia, in the USA. And he asks, what is the tech gift you are most looking forward to during this holiday season?
Go ahead, Nigel.
So it might be a bit disingenuous to call it a tech gift, but my company allowed me to get a MacBook Pro Max. So the M1 Max. So I have this running. It's already causing me pain, but not just learning how to use it. That's what I'm going to test run this holiday.
Go ahead, David.
I bought myself a Ricoh Theta SC2, and I'm looking forward to messing around with that thing.
Go ahead, Tony.
The team behind Conversation with Tony Mobley. Thank you all.
Let's go to the next question.
The next question is from John Pewitt in Huntersville, North Carolina. Next year, I'll have to go back to the office. What should I bring with me to improve my telepresence?
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, I guess it depends on if you have your own office or if it's a cubicle or something. Yeah, cubicle type space. Yeah. So obviously sound is going to be a real trick, and even the PR40, which is great for off-axis rejection, you may still find that there's a lot of just spill from other cubicles, and you may find that going to a headset will be more beneficial. And so exploring that. But then the lighting will be a trick too, right? Because you're not going to bring all the big lighting into your cubicle.
Well, you can. I mean, the cubicle, the things would be a great place to latch stuff onto.
It's true. Or just lean over the person next to you. Can you hold this
Extend a
for me?
grid. I think you need to extend a grid over the top of your cubicle, like a little. Just put it up over the corners, just like nice little speed rail that goes up to the corners, or maker pipe, and then just run like a little 2x2 grid across there and start hanging lights. I'm telling you,
Just
so
close it all
awesome.
in. Close it all in. Make it an office.
Oh my gosh.
But seriously though, you don't want to change much from what you've got right now, because there's still going to be people that you're connecting with online and doing this sort of thing. And so then it's running down that list, right? And just getting that audio as best as you can. Obviously your internet's going to be fine, but getting that audio right, getting that lighting right, getting a decent camera to just make all that work really well. And like you have experienced, because you've said it before, you go onto these calls and everyone's just like, oh, wow, you look and sound great. And suddenly you have this, as Alex has said, you have this extra credibility in whatever you're saying, because people can see and hear you. They're connecting with you on a level that all these other people that have terrible frames and can't hear them properly are far distant to what you're saying. And now you're winning.
You go, Jeffrey.
If you do the whole maker pipe thing, then my idea is actually perfect, and that is a stoplight. Just go down to the corner and just take it off the. No, it's something where you can indicate to people that, hey, I'm actually on a telepresence.
You need an on-air button. You need an on-air window.
Yeah, I've the Devoom stuff, which is those 16 by 16 pixel things, and you can actually set up an on-air and control it with your phone. So
I think
that
you
works too. But
you get a classic one, like a classic on-air, right by the door, and then you need the grid that comes up about 1.5 feet above your cubicle so that everyone can see it with all the lights and everything else. You got to set the pace. Go ahead, Lois.
Well, Alex, if you're going to have a grid up there, make it a bucky. Make it a dome,
it's hard
a
to attach
geodesic
lights.
dome.
Hard to put lights
So
on a
what I
bucky.
was thinking on, if you have a cubicle, I think it would be very important to have a camera that has a really short depth of field, so you can be in focus, but the stuff behind you, which you may not have control over, will be out of focus. If you're in your own room, if you have a separate room, then doing all the things that we normally do. And you might want to find a place where you can just drop in, like after hours, and check your audio to make sure that it's loud enough. Check your, do the whole thing that we do, and then go and have your regular Zoom call.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I've already got a bit of a reputation for being eccentric, so this is just going to take it over the top.
You got to send it. If you do it with a grid, you got to send us a picture. That's all I'm saying. It's gonna be awesome.
But I will say that whatever I do is going to have to be portable, because we don't have assigned workspaces. Where we rent through an app a space for the day. So it's just, I'm trying to think of ideas. I'm already going to bring my Mix Pre 3 I'm
I
actually
just
thinking
think
about getting a Mix Pre 6 to
I
leave
think you
in
just
the
allocate a
here.
first hour. The first hour of your workday is setting up your grid.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lois.
It may not work in your situation, but if you do have to go from place to place, you might consider getting some folding screens. And they make metal ones or wood ones, whatever. And that way you can fold it up. It's very easy to take around. And when you open it up, you know where everything goes. So you don't have to deal with what's the shape or size of the cubicle.
Go, David.
If you're eccentric, go for a geodesic dome that folds up really tight, and you can pop it up over your head. It will double as cone of silence.
I think you need I've always wanted a cone of silence. Anyway, all right, next question.
Our next question is from Tony Mobley in Newnan, Georgia. And he asks, anybody using new gear in their setup this morning?
Go ahead, Dennis.
So yes, I have a Christmas tree behind me, a different one. I'm in the living room today, so I have spent much of the morning configuring the living room for this, which I am then going to use on a Zoom call with my family later on.
You got to leave it up. If you're gonna do all that work, you have to leave that Christmas tree up for a while. You know, I find that as long as the Christmas tree goes down before Labor Day, people, don't complain too much. Next question.
The next question comes from David Brady in New York City. As a host of a Zoom meeting, does the mute all function affect the host and co-host's mute state?
Go ahead, Lois.
It has been in the past that when the host clicks the mute all, everybody else, co-host included, gets muted, but the host does not. So unless they've changed something recently, that's the answer.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, exactly right. It will mute all the co-hosts. There's an interesting thing with that we started to see is getting a little bit better, but there is, when you hit that mute all button, it'll also ask mute everyone automatically on entry, which is different to another setting, which is mute everyone on entry. And the reason I point this out is that you can imagine when we're doing events with 60 meetings going and we've got 20,000 people coming in, we kind of see all the problems that you can get. And one of those problems seems to be with Android devices, some of the older Android devices that will not abide by the mute all or mute when it enters. And so you can get all these devices that join the meeting and are unmuted, and they don't know, and it can be super distracting. However, that function, which sits at the bottom of the participants tab, in the middle there, you can hit that, and that does work. I don't know why it's different, but that does work. And then it's getting tricky too when you have all these co-hosts and they think, oh yeah, I'll just mute. They can mute and they'll mute the host. And then particularly when you have an event where you don't have an actual host, you've just got a feed coming in, that causes a lot of problems. So there's those two separate functions, which is mute all, which does mute host, and the mute all not including the host. And then it depends, if you're the host, you can do mute all and it won't mute you. So it's a long way of talking.
I mean, that's one of the things we're thinking about with Zoom OSC is doing some more stuff where with what we're doing here, where, for instance, we may set it up where whoever is selected in the answer, it unmutes them and mutes everybody else. Just constantly moves around and makes sure that we only have, the reader and the host will not be affected. But that's where you can kind of set up like, oh, these are the 4 people that aren't affected. When I hit mute all within Zoom OSC, it'll mute just the people that I want it to mute, or unmute them, as needed, and control that. And then go, David.
Yeah, the reason I ask is a lot of times we're running things in just a host co-host thing where co-host might roll video into a meeting, and it'd be handy to have a mute everybody except host and co-host, but I guess not.
Well, and the yeah, I mean, that was because when Grant was about to sing, I kind of just looked down the hole, like, it's because we always have someone's going to sing for us or do something musical, and then there's always one mic open somewhere, and it causes that auto echo cancellation thing that none of us like. Next question.
The next question is from Tony Mobley in Newnan, Georgia. George, could you describe your son's reaction to his new M1 MacBook Pro 14 and what applications do you want him to have on it?
Go ahead, George.
So quickly, I always tell my son, you have wants and then there's need. My job is to decipher which one you need and what you want. So he wanted a PlayStation card, and then I got him an M1. But anyway,
How did that go?
it went well, and thanks to Apple, it comes in the shipping box. You know, it has a pull tab, so it was somewhat of a reveal. He took off the wrapping paper and then he pulled this tab. So slowly, it exposed the Apple, MacBook, and then obviously when he pulled it out, he saw it was a MacBook Pro. I says, well, that's the M1. He said, I got an M1. So he did a few laps around the living room, with excitement. And it was good. Got me a little teary-eyed. I guess that's what is supposed to happen. But definitely Final Cut. He's in the media. He likes the space. So Final Cut for sure. I'm going to introduce him to Isadora because he's doing some theater stuff in his last year at school. So I'm happy about it. It's expensive to buy Apple gear, but I think for anyone that wants your kid to really get in, he's always had my hand-me-down, so he knows Max. But it was a good feeling to get him a new machine of his own to move him into his last year of high school and onto college. To Tony, it was a good morning for him.
It's great, Tony.
I just wanted to encourage you to go ahead and get him the full Apple suite. Even if he's not playing with it yet, I think that he will. I just wanted to encourage you to do that.
That's great. Next question.
Our next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. What does the call out V1 mean? I heard it after the panel was locked.
Go ahead, George.
So I'm glad this question came back up. So there's a couple of video positions. So it's pretty much is the video engineer's position. So the V1 is generally the person that's doing the switching. Also, the engineer in charge could also be the V1. But generally, you have an EIC who's overall in charge of the video engineering space on a live event space. And then you have the video 2 who could be the playback. So the V1 is switching, the V2 maybe playback. You also might have a V3 who might also be the person handling graphics. And I'm going to move over to the audio side a little bit too also. The A1 is the audio 1, who would be Brian Maddox, is in charge of the overall setup. And then you have your A2, A3 also.
An A1 is otherwise known as a Brian Maddox. Go ahead, Steph.
Does EIC mean?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
So the EIC is the engineer in charge. So he might be he's in charge of the overall video space. He might have the Alex's layout of what he wants the video setup to be, and he oversees the V1, the V2, the V3, and make sure that the engineering space gets set up right.
Yeah, and usually there's one person for most of our stuff, there's one person within our crew that knows enough about all the different pieces and then works with all the department heads to make sure that everything comes together. Next question.
Our next question is from Tima Gallegos in Austin, Texas. Does anyone use an HDMI cable with Ethernet? And if so, how do you have it utilized?
Go ahead, John.
Timo, I'm not sure exactly what your use case is, but I did a large training room once, and I used the Geffen, I don't know what would you call these? They call them extenders. So this takes an HDMI signal in, and then it takes Cat 5 or Cat 6 300 feet away, and then converts it back to HDMI on the other side. They work fantastic.
Do they carry the camera control?
No.
Yeah. Go ahead,
but
Jeffrey.
they do have IR in this one.
Right.
You can control the remote display.
Oh, nice. Jeffrey?
So yeah, I have my overhead camera actually on an HDMI to Ethernet box, and then that wraps around and then comes from to back into the computer. The cool thing about that is I could actually put another receiver on it. So if I wanted to go to another TV or anything like that, it could definitely do so. But keep in mind that a lot of these are basically one-on-one boxes, which means that you can't put them on your network. You gotta have to either have a cable or a dedicated switch for that to go to the other devices. There are some devices that will let you go over your regular network if you need that.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I might have read the question a little differently. I think the question, at least in my head, was whether or not the HDMI cable carry Ethernet or not, and what makes it different. Most modern 2.x compliant HDMI cables have Ethernet built into them. I'm not sure if you just eyeball it, if you can tell if it has Ethernet or not, but it's just a safe bet to get it with Ethernet just in case you start swapping cables around down the road somewhere.
Next question.
Our next question is from Courtney Goodin in Hollywood, California. Has anyone found an IR blaster that works with Amazon Echo or Google Assistant to add voice control to equipment that has IR remotes but no network?
Go ahead, David.
Not 100% sure if it'll do it, but the Logitech Harmony line, their hub-based remotes are pretty solid and usually bridge that gap.
Go ahead. Yes. Next question.
Our next question is from Vic Hernandez in Springfield. And he says, I've used my closet as an ad hoc temporary solution for audio recording. Office hours has inspired me to do better than pretty good. I've relocated my clothing and a 360-degree sound treatment. Is the MV7 my best mic choice for under $300?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think my first question, Vic, is where did the clothes go? And if you're married, you might have a little issue with that. But the Shure MV7 is an excellent choice, a good starting point, and it's not that expensive for a couple of reasons. One is it has USBs, you can plug it directly into your computer. And the other is it has an XLR, which means it'll plug into any analog device that's out there, mixer, preamp, whatever. It's just a good place for you to be.
I was just thinking the clothing was probably a pretty good sound treatment. You know, retreating it might actually be harder than with the clothing there. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I would have kept the clothing in. It makes it cheaper and easier, but it also depends on what you're recording. The MV7 works really well, but it is more geared towards speaking rather than singing. It's got a frequency range of 50 hertz to 16 kilohertz. So if you have, especially if you have a lower end voice, you might want to get to some of that lower end range. If you're singing, then you might want to think of something a little bit different than the MV7.
Next question.
Our next question comes from Joe at Alpha Creative in Gainesville. Grant, are there any good sales the day after Christmas?
Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, so looking
report
into
from the future. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I've got the almanac here that I'm gonna give you that for the sports. Do you know what I did? Just was looking at Amazon, and I think the Echo Dot is actually a really quite a good device. And in Australia, we have them for $19, which I think is about $2.50 American. Right. You know, and you can have a bunch of those placed around, and you can pair them in stereo and all. They're very cool. Very cool.
Next question.
Our next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Courtney, you mentioned that one advantage of movie theaters are large screen formats like IMAX and Dolby Cinema. Wouldn't the barrier to entry for independent filmmakers be the processing power needed for large format workflows?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, there's not necessarily a processing power that the independent would need, because usually almost all DCI or packages, DCP packages, which go out into the theaters, are put together by third parties, by what used to be film labs, now are in charge of packaging digital media to distribute to the theaters, and even the majors outsource a lot of this stuff themselves. So it's just pay the price, and usually an independent. For an independent film to get on a large screen, there has to be a dearth of other blockbuster tentpole movies out at that time, so the chances of them playing on the IMAX screen are very small anyway, unless there's something horribly wrong in the market, like a pandemic. And so I don't think it would inhibit the independent. Usually the independent films are the ones that play in a multiplex. Now with most theaters going to a server-based system, they can move films around. They're not dealing with prints anymore, so they can move films around. They can show 3 different movies in the same theater a day, or they change. My multiplexes change the films they're playing in theater 7, at the last second, depending upon the overflow in theater 6, So they have the flexibility. The theaters have the flexibility to move things around instantly. and with the DCP packages, which is the type of hard drive, basically, of the package of all the files and everything is needed to project that film digitally. It's just a matter of routing within the network in the theater. So it's not really a problem or an impediment to the independent film once they get the financing to distribute it. And the financing to rent the theaters or distribute it worldwide is the bigger mountain to climb than worrying about the format of the files.
I was in a projection booth and I saw the IMAX view of the Pacific Rim for some reason. It's like 6 feet. Like it's just this giant reel. Like it was just kind of this amazing thing to see of this just monster. And I was like, we used to do that with every film. There'd be this giant platter of a film that you have to move around, or for IMAX, but for other films still these huge mags.
There are very few IMAX actual digital, media projection, film projection left. They've switched most over to digital. But about 4 or 5, I think, left in the United States.
The thing is that I think that I don't talk to any independent filmmakers that are even thinking about theater release anymore. Like all of the ones that I talk to are just looking at whether they can sell to Netflix or Apple, or if you're an independent filmmaker, you're not thinking about theater. If you are thinking about theatrical release, you're thinking about a pipe dream. So just be clear, like that's not the future for independent films. And so people, that's and I think that we're going to continue to see that kind of become more stratified, but also, everything can do 4K at this point. In fact, a lot of things. I mean, if you're on a Mac, 8K is not out of the question. So as far as just doing something relatively smooth, as soon as you start getting into effects, it starts to become a big deal. But a lot of independent films, if they're smart, are not doing heavy effects on small budgets. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that's a good point, Alex. That a little girl playing her family's organ can get 13.5 million views than an independent film has a much better chance of getting a wider distribution on YouTube than it does anywhere.
Well, it's not. Well, the big thing is that when you don't have it's just an entire. I had a really good conversation with a filmmaker, and by the way, we're going to get an opportunity to watch an independent film get made this spring. So in March, stay tuned for that. I have some friends that are doing an independent film, and and so I was talking to someone, not them, but someone different, and they were just saying, what's great about it from a creativity perspective for an independent filmmaker is I don't have to prove that I can draw people into a theater. As an independent filmmaker, that's a very freeing thing. I don't have to prove that this story would fill theaters or pay itself back with theatrical sales. I only have to prove that it will fill a need within a subscription service. It's going to be part of the ecosystem, part of that thing. And that's just a fascinating thing. They're like, and I'm told that it's now much more creative for the filmmakers because they don't have to think about box office. They don't have to think about that measure of success. They're part of an ecosystem, and then they have a much better chance of people actually watching it. And it just adds value to the entire ecosystem as opposed to having to make money and stand on its own. It's a really interesting thing. Next question.
Our next question is from Georgie Kennedy Jr. in Washington, D.C. Now that you know of the Apple orange dot, are you fixated on it?
TJ.
I've seen a lot of articles pop up about that this week, and a couple of them have mentioned a possible temporary workaround that a developer has posted to GitHub. I will post the link to that app. It's called Undot. Use at your own risk because it is on GitHub.
And it does seem to work. This is just so people know what we're talking about. If you look up in this corner right here, you'll see this little orange dot, and that little orange dot is telling you that there's a microphone that's being used by an app, and that's what it's on the secondary screen, and which is usually where we play out. Go ahead, Mitchell.
You mean the orange dot that's in the upper right hand corner of the screen? No.
Yeah. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, it's just obviously when you're looking for it now, you see it. So I was in the truck yesterday and I could see it on the CarPlay. So it's kind of funny that you see it on your phone, you see it on the CarPlay.
Right.
It's just everywhere you look now.
Yeah, Grant.
Yeah, I have it because I've upgraded this machine, but I don't use this machine for play out. So I was surprised that even on QLab, that it's still sitting above QLab on all the external screens. But I have all my Mac Mini M1s as my production playout machines that I have not upgraded. Just a note on that GitHub little script is I believe that it disables all notifications as well. Like it actually is a real.
Is that a promise?
Taking.
Does it promise to do that? Does it really turn off all? I hate notifications. There's like my notifications are all set to they are only available from 9:59 p.m. to 10 p.m. So there's like 1 minute they all show up. Does that? So does it really?
Turns them all. Yeah, turns off the whole.
What a feature!
Engine.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna definitely. I wasn't sure if I needed it for the orange dot, but I definitely need it for notifications. All right, next question.
Our next question is from Joe at Alpha Creative in Gainesville. Why would someone want to buy a MixPre 6 over the 3 for solo streams?
Go ahead, TJ.
One is availability. They're not making the MixPre 3 right now just due to the shortage of components, but also a couple days ago, we were watching Mickey help Nigel configure his MixPre 3 to get sidetone in. And once you have audio in, excuse me, you have audio in one channel and you have sidetone in the other channel, suddenly your MixPre 3 is full and you have no other channels available to you. The MixPre 6, you get extra channels to do other things with.
Right. Go ahead, George.
Piggyback on TJ. So obviously I'm using one USB 2 to come back into Zoom so I can listen to you guys back. But obviously I have Premiere Pro and Final Cut routed in my MixPre also to go out. So you definitely get more USB outs, a little bit more flexibility with the 6. So if you're just going to use it for office hours, 3 is good. But if you're going to do more, 6 is definitely the way to go.
And while you're going down, here's the slippery slope. This is while you're going down that slippery slope. Remember that you get XLR, you get mini XLR out on the MixPre 10. Go ahead, Lois.
Well, I was going to say, if you're in office hours and after hours, they're probably going to keep pushing you to do more and more and more and more. And just build it in for advancement.
Just price it in. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Because you can. Pixelmeter 3s are out of the supply chain. I'm sorry, on the next question. Sorry, MixPre are in the supply chain. MixPre 3s are not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that's the big thing. Having a couple extra channels makes a big difference with the 6. You can do things like ambisonic recordings and so on and so forth on the 6 that you can't do on the 3. And if you ever want to do that, and with the 10, of course, you get the 2 XLR right and left out. That might be good if you want to go back into a camera. Next question.
Our next question is from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenab, Germany. And he says, Pixelmeter Pro can now export motion files. How would you use this feature in your workflow? And are there any other apps that can export motion files?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I put a good link in from Mark over at Ripple Training. We'll explain it all, but basically animation. Pixelmeter Pro is basically a 2D, and with putting it into motion, you can animate those 2Ds and make them look pretty effective.
Yeah, it's always been a little bit of an issue when you're trying to bring files into motion that they don't all end up in the layers that you want, or there's a little bit of a setup. So the idea that you could build a composition in Pixelmeter and then export it and open it directly into motion, I think is a great feature add. Next question.
Our next question is from Tony Mobley in Newnan, Georgia. Alex, could you mention again the mute button for Zoom meetings?
Tony, I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about. What I use?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't have my little camera set up right now, but I use a Studio Technologies Model 205, and that is the. It's got a main mute that's latch. That's the latch here, and it's also got TalkBack 1 and 2, so I can do comms. And it's Dante, so it's based in Dante. It also will do an analog in and out of the box as well. So anyway, that's what I'm using for that. There are smaller versions of that and larger versions of that. So it's kind of, I got it because it has, I felt like I don't, probably if I'm on air as a host, I don't need more than 2 talkbacks. What you use the talkback, and what's nice is that the talkbacks are momentary. So if I push, you couldn't hear me there because I just pushed one down. That means I can push in, it'll activate, like let's say I have Unity opened. I could push that one down and talk to a team like, hey, I need this person to do something. And I feel certain in the hardware that it's muting me to the outside world. And then I can let go and keep talking, doing what I'm doing. So that's why I have up to 2 channels in that area. And it's just the right form factor. It was small enough. The ones I've had in the past have been analog, and they're big, and they have. And then this one also has a closure, an 1/8" jack for closures. So my next version of this is that I'm actually building a little stand for my coffee. So when I set it down, it unmutes the mic, and if I pick up my coffee, it automatically mutes my mic because that means I'm going to take a sip, and I don't want to gulp in front of all of you. So there's other that's my next little project. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and if Bill were here, he would tell you what he's using. He's using the Rolls MM11, I think,
right,
as a mic mute switch. It's much cheaper and much less functional than what Alex is using, but it will get the job done if you just have an analog mic that you want to mute.
I do think that the Rolls adds a little self noise that I don't like. That's one of the reasons I don't have it. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Alex, does your 205 have a GPIO contact closure for an on-air light or something like that?
It only has an input contact closure set up for 1/8" jack, I think. Hold on, let me look. Hold on. Yeah, I don't see anything that would let me do that. So, yeah. But you could hook it. I could probably hook that contact closure to whatever else that it sends something to it and then send something out at the same time. Grant.
I know that we say that the Stream Deck can fail all the time, but I still come back to it, and only because you can use the global shortcut in Zoom, and 99% of the time it works perfectly fine for me. The thing that I like about it is that it sends a signal to the people that you're in Zoom that you, if you keep muted and then you unmute, people see that you've unmuted, and I'll just do that, and people will see that, actually, Grant, did you want to say something? Because
right,
they see that I unmuted. It's actually a really subtle way of communicating that without having to, raise the digital hand or anything like that. So I do really like that Zoom icon.
Yeah, I think for me, the reason that I like what I have here and why I finally went to it was because it also cuts off my side tone. So I know I'm off, when I do that. And so for me, it's really important because when I hit that, I tap it, and now I cannot hear myself. If I start talking, I cannot hear myself, and so I know that I'm muted.
So I stacked it. Stacked the button with a companion thing as well. So that's sending to the X32, and it's muting.
Right.
It's muting just the send, either just the send to me or to everywhere. It's just muting the channel. So at the same time, it's muting Zoom and it's muting my channel, so then I know that my side tone's off.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, Alex, the noise problem you mentioned with a mechanical microphone mute switch, a lot of times it's not noise coming from the switch because it's passive. So it's not generating noise. The noise is being generated downstream from where the mic switch is, because if you're running it through any type of compressor or any type of mic leveling software, it sees no input and will start to crank up that channel, and that's where your system noise comes from. It doesn't necessarily come from the switch itself. So any mic mute switch you have that doesn't mute upstream of your dynamics control will give you that same problem of cranking up the noise.
Right. Next question.
Our next question comes from Douglas Carmichael. If you were recreating the ILM Rebel Mac unit today, what Mac model would you issue for each team member? 16-inch M1 MacBook Pros with 64 gigabytes of RAM and 8 terabyte SSD?
Mac Pros. We would definitely have Mac Pros, just because that's what they would standard. That would be the standard issue at the moment, and we would. No one at ILM, we didn't really worry that much about being on the cusp of the hardware. It was usually whatever. The fact that it was expandable and we could put extra cards in it, and all that stuff would be what we'd probably end up having. But the reality is, all those Star Wars shots were done on something that's probably 1/10 the speed of a phone at this point, which is kind of crazy. Next question.
The next question is from John Pewitt in Huntersville, North Carolina. IMAX versus Dolby Cinema. What's the difference?
Go ahead, TJ.
IMAX was originally developed as a film standard. It was using 70 millimeter film that went through the camera sideways. So you'd get 70 millimeters of film top to bottom in the frame. And then it would be wider than that horizontally left and right. And then it was meant for extreme large projection, like screens that are 4 stories in height and equally as or bigger as wide. And with multi tracks of sound and whatnot, it has been now sort of mutated a bit to fit into a standard multiplex cinema. Dolby Cinema is a specification for certain projection, light output ability, contrast ratio, and audio output ability. And I'm hoping that Courtney can take it with the flea flicker.
All right, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you covered a lot of it. I'll just read to you from the Google response. Says Dolby Cinema projects better images with 500 times higher contrast ratio and 4 times more resolution than IMAX. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, IMAX uses 40% larger screen. It's a different aspect ratio for IMAX. It's more of a square screen. Where was I? On the IMAX uses 40% larger screens and a 26% taller aspect ratio as compared to Dolby Cinema. Both of them use dual 4K laser projectors and an added upgraded sound system for a more immersive experience. So
there you go. Next question.
Our next question is from Simon Sunday in India. Auto tagging for content / learning modules. What tools would you suggest for auto tagging of content? Also, could you highlight some of the best practices that need to be followed?
I don't know if we have a really good answer for that. I know that what we do here to tag stuff is that Mukana keeps track of all of us answering questions and hands a bunch of metadata to Jeffrey, who then puts it into YouTube. It's not quite the same, but it does keep track of some of those things. Go ahead, Laura.
I'm wondering if they're talking about auto tagging as far as on a website for things like alt tags. And I still prefer that be done by hand. If you go back and watch the session we did with Ken Jordan back in August, it kind of explained, that is one example of why I say tag by hand.
I agree. I think tagging by hand is the way to go. Next question.
Our next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Alex, you talk about moving Mukana to phone only. Wouldn't that cut out audience members without mobile devices?
Go ahead, DJ.
What I believe Alex is referring to here is the Mukana layout, which for the mobile layout does not include an embedded YouTube stream, which makes it just a whole lot easier to just see the questions.
Yeah, we actually built that screen so that you can watch it on TV and then still be able to interact with chat. What we found was we wanted to have something you could open up a mobile device and sit there and just be able to watch something on your Apple TV, but still be able to chat with everybody and ask questions. And we put it into a mobile format to allow you to do that. Next question.
The next question is from Roscoe Jones in Brea, California. It's a Wonderful Life. In color or black and white?
Go ahead, David.
One of the good things about living in Manhattan, Christmas Day is Chinese food, and It's a Wonderful Life on the big screen at the IFC Center, probably at 4:00 this afternoon.
Very good. John?
Black and white. Why mess with a classic?
George?
Black and white.
Yeah. Mitchell?
Black and white. The director never intended it to be done in color. He had a vision for it, and that's the way it was, and that's the way our memory connects to it.
Yeah, he could have done it in color at that point. So the choice of going to black and white was a director's choice. And I'm glad that everyone picked wisely. Next question.
The next question comes from RJ Rod in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Would you recommend Sennheiser IE 100 Pro or Shure SE215 in-ear monitor headphones for Zoom or Teams use case, or neither?
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, so I've got the 215s, and the reason I got these was because they were available locally, and I was sick of using the Otto headset, which looks great, and is the Otto is more hidden than these are. But as office hours audio quality increased more and more, I didn't want to hear office hours through a tube. I wanted to hear more high fidelity. And so I've been really happy with these, particularly when I discovered that using different size of the foams in one ear versus the other was the key to the comfort. And so I just assumed that both of my ear holes would be the same, but apparently not. And the final point is that apparently they're all right for singing as well.
Last question for the first hour.
That comes from Douglas Carmichael, and he asks, I saw an ETC press release where they were controlling multiple TV studio lights from one console. Wouldn't you want to use one console per venue with a direct view of what you're controlling?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Most menus are going to be in a rep plot, especially something like a news studio, be completely in a rep plot. So large studios, they know exactly what the lighting layout's going to be. What they need to see is what the quality is coming through the monitors, and they will have a set of monitors, and they will adjust appropriately.
There you go. All right. We are now going to turn off YouTube. We'll turn off the stream. Goodbye, YouTube. Merry Christmas. We're glad that you were all able to come, and we're just going to keep waving until Lois hits end live stream. Bye. Evidently, it's hard. We can't. The host has to do that, but we're just going to keep waving here. No pressure to the editor, but whoever's cutting the show needs to. We're just going to keep doing this until the end.
I'm sorry, no one ever told me how to do that. So
I think
if
it's
you'll
right up in the
instruct me,
upper left.